Let me introduce myself first. My name is Eustace Payne. Uh, and let me give you a little background because, I mean, why else? What gives you the right or the ability to speak about anything you don't know yet? So, first of all, I come from a very religious background. My grandfather was a Pentecostal bishop. Uh, then,
Are you the Higgins from Boston? From
yeah,
Boston?
yeah,
From Boston.
yeah.
Oh, I don't really want
So I don't have to do so. So my grandfather, and that church is still around on Woodrow Ave. His nephew is Reverend Michael Haynes, 12 Baptist, 4 years there, House of Representatives, parole board. He was the only one in that generation. My generation blew up. I had, and at one point, I think we had a couple died. I had 10 cousins that were ministers, and my sister married them. So that's 11 of us. I was a state probation officer at Boston Municipal Court for 10 years. Then I went to the feds. I was with the feds for 11 years. In the middle of being with the feds, God told me I was not going to retire. And I was like, okay. Well, when God tells you something, you need to do a little more than just okay. So, of course, being a man of God, I did not listen. And therefore, I was not ready when he said time to go. So, in the middle of, towards the end, I accepted the call to ministry. I got ordained in 2014 through the AME Church. And so, after I left the feds, I started a nonprofit working with the same clientele I was working with in the feds. So, these two brothers already know. The system will mess your head up. You will see things and process things that your brain will never be able to forget. I got a head full of bad wiring. I got a blessed woman who understands that I will go into the cave because all the stuff I've dealt with, seen, been part of, that'll send me into a depression. And I'm not much better at it than I used to be because it used to take 3, 4 days. Now, depending on the situation, 2 days, maybe three. But that's all part of this whole world, alter world. So I started my own nonprofit, and people talk about prison ministry. They're really talking about holding service in prison. So I stopped saying prison ministry, and I say ministering in prison because I went in and I ran a program. I ran a group. I was in at my peak 4 different prisons. The first one I was in was Boston Pre-Release, which is on Canterbury Street. The second one I was in was MCI Shirley Medium, which I did not want to go to. But I had some brothers with me that had done time, and they said, you need to go there. And I was like, no, and then signed up. The third prison I was in was Concord Farms. And then the fourth prison was Shirley Minimum. So all told, I've been in 13 different prisons, 2 out of state. And what I learned going into these prisons is that I learned more about myself and God than anything else. I learned that the God that's in these, excuse me, because I'm getting into my biases, within the 4 walls of each church, it ain't got nothing to do with the God that be functioning outside these buildings. I have heard stories about God, and I'm telling you, 95% of the prisoners that are locked up have had God experience. Now, How many of them recognize it as a God experience is a different story. And that 5%, those are sociopaths. They just out there, they gone. They're already dead, they're just still breathing. So we won't count. But I had conversations with so many guys that told me God's story and had not one day been in church or had any association with anything that had to do with God, that had a God story. One of my friends, I know him since we were 15. We were on opposite Pop Warner teams. He played for the Colts, and I played for the Vikings in Roxbury. And he he ended up doing time, and he told me about how he used to tell the Christians get away with that nonsense. He told the same thing to the Muslims. He's like, yeah, raping women, and now you're a Muslim and you want me to respect you. Get away from me. Gets into a fight for somebody else and talked about how he was all big and bad. And when he got to solitary, he said he felt like the devil told him, yo, man, that was thought, but I'm going to catch you when you get out. And left him there. And he's sitting in solitary. He said, it wasn't even my fight. He said, during the night, you heard a voice talking to him. And he kept saying to the other guys, you hear that? You hear that? And they're like, shut up, man, go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And he's like bugging because he's hearing this voice. And I hear these stories over and over and over again. Now, of course, as a minister, I'm going up into the church, right? I mean, into the prison. I'm going to show these guys who God. If you want to show God. And so I'm working with these guys. And the reason why I'm working in the prison first is because they need to change. And I forgot, Shirley Medium was the best one. And I had started out with 15 guys, and they would give a good time. And I had 15 dudes that I couldn't stand because they were just there for good time. And I had to go to administration and say, take away the good time. Take away the good time. And when I took away the good time, those 15 guys disappeared. But the 4 other guys stayed. And suddenly, after we got going, 4 went to 10. 10 went to 15. 15 went to 20. 20 went to 25. From that point on, I had regularly between 17 and 1.30 in a room held 25. And every single one of them were violent offenders. 75% of the room, 75% was lifers. They had all killed somebody. They had all taken a life. And let me tell you something, you take a life, you're not going to get right till you sit with God because it wasn't your life to take. And that's what they came to the understanding, is that they found out that the life they took was not theirs to took, and the only reason they were going to get out is because they had to have their moment with God. And it wasn't about to probe or anybody else. It was about them finding peace with what they had done. And so many of them would tell me about finding that peace. You have a question?
Yeah, I don't know. Yes. Do you own the church?
The what?
Do you own the church?
Do I own a church?
Yeah.
No.
Do you
That's a long story. I get my number from your pastor. That's not what we're here to talk about. That's a long story.
10 to 15 to like 16 years. That means you get them. Be like, like making the whole time.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that on another day. So back to what we're talking about right now.
Let me interrupt for a second. If you have any questions, please hold on until the end. I'll give you a chance to answer.
We're gonna stay on point for now.
Yeah.
I learned so much about God. I learned about his character. I learned about his grace. I learned that we don't have a handle on why and how he does a thing. When I'm sitting there talking to guys who not one time experienced had defined their experience with God prior to going to prison, and then for them to sit down, because the one thing I forgot to say this part, see, as we're going to start this, there are no titles in this one right now. There's no deacons. There's no elders. It's just brothers. And the reason why I say that is because when I went inside, my program was faith-based. That's the only title it had, faith-based. When they asked me what, they knew I was a reverend, they want to know what to call me. I said, Eustace. Because how am I going to sit there and tell them to call me reverend in their house for a title I have not earned? When you give a title first, you don't know what that title or connotation to them means. You don't know if they've had a bad experience with this last reverend, this deacon, this thing, or some of the church folks that come up and do a prison ministry and do a program or do a service. And then when somebody comes up to talk to them, they're to himself. Huh? To himself. It's about me. So, but I got these stories because they got to know Eustace. Eustace walked in as a man who's flawed, got issues, but for God's grace, would have been sitting right there with him, getting 10 years minimum mandatory, but driving my boy up to school with a giant bag of herb that was on, and anybody knows the game, it was stacked. It was like one piece that was this big. Driving up Route 9 in Brookline, Norfolk County, and I'm driving, and he's doing this. Go. And Rob daylight. Oh. That was God. And in Norfolk County, that's 10 years minimum mandatory. And I knew that God kept me from that. So I'm not gonna sit there and look at other people like, oh, I can't believe you did that. I also talk to Christians all the time. I said I work with people who kill people. They go like, oh, how did you work with them? I said, everybody's a potential killer. And people go, not me, not me. I said, what about your kid? As soon as you say about their kid, they're like, don't play. I was like, I'm just telling you. Certain circumstances, you do it. If one dude walks up to you and says it's him or me, so we're all capable in a certain circumstance. You're not above it. But God showed me how powerful it was one time. The greatest compliment I ever got in the ministry was from a 5%er. Everybody know what a 5%er is? So a 5%er says to me, and remember, I told him to call me Eustace. And he said, Reverend, can I ask you a question? I was like, yeah, what's up? He said, well, we all know you're a man of God. I don't even know the question. The 5%er called me Reverend and acknowledged me as a man of God in a room full of people. And in my room, I had Christians, Catholics, Muslims, Nation of Islam, 5%ers. I even had a wicked white boy with tattoos of horns on his head. And he sat right there in the teacher's chair, fourth row, front center, sat in the teacher's chair. He came to me before he joined the group and said, you ain't in there pumping no Bible. I said, dude, I don't even bring a Bible. And he's like, okay. But everything I taught was biblical principle. Everything I represented was basically what I believe that's the Bible. I just didn't bring the Bible. And if we had any religious discussions, it never went below Abraham. Everybody respected Abraham. The Muslims, Nation of Islam, everybody was with Abraham. So I didn't take it any lower than Abraham because the whole point of getting someone to see what you see and to believe what you believe is a discussion, not an argument. As soon as it's an argument, I'm going to defend my side. I don't even care if I'm wrong because I don't want to let you be right. So the best way to get me on your side is for us to align ourselves with things we both believe and have a discussion where now, once we understand what we're both cool with, now we can have a discussion about things we're different about. And I had some of the greatest discussion with 5%ers because they'll read anything. They read anything. Anything that teaches and helps them grow, they will read. They'll read Buddhism, they'll read the Quran, they'll read the Bible. And I brought some volunteers with me, and some of them had done time. And unfortunately, they got so dogmatic that they were coming in, because they got saved when they were in and come out. And I don't know what church they went to, but now all of a sudden they want to come in here and save everybody. And I was like, you may not want to do that. Right. He's like, no, man. I was like, you need to let them know God is this, God is that. I was like, okay. So if I brought in a guest speaker, I sat with the brothers in the back because I didn't want them looking at me when the speaker was up there. I also didn't want to be tied to something dumb he might say. So he started pumping Christianese. I call Christianese all these sayings, God is good.
All the time.
And all the time. And he started doing, he's throwing off his Christianese, and he was getting ripped to shreds. And after it was over, I said, the reason why I don't do that with them is because they got more time to read than I do. They study more than I do. Because that's all they're doing. So you want to show how smart you are in the Bible, and you just got ripped open by Muslim. Because you want to show them something. So you weren't there for them. You were there for you. So I was there for me. I was there because all the crazy stuff that had happened to the jobs I had. And I had a lot of conversations with God. One time I had a young man on federal supervision with his young, 20. But in effect, you get a whole report of somebody. And as I read the report, when he was 8 and 9, his mother used to kick him out the house to get a groove on. But his grandmother lived down the street, so he just go to his grandmother. Then she moved abroad, and she still did the same thing. I met that guy 10, 11 years later, and the bass in my voice was too strong for him. He shrunk in the chair anytime I spoke to him because he was that damaged. And I had to ask one of the female POs to take him. And I said, he can't handle a male's voice. And I said to God, God, the Bible says that you'll always lead us a way out. Where was his way out? Where was his way out? Look at this. Look where's his way out. This dude was so damaged that when he was in county jail, he married this 34-year-old woman. Now, she's 13 years a senior. She's HIV positive. He accepted a proposal to marry her because he was so love-starved. God, where's his way out? And God said to me, I never said when. This is the stuff that me and God, as I'm looking at real ministry, looking at people's lives, that we're having these conversations because he's drawing me closer, but I'm still doing this job. And I knew I was leaving when a young lady, very smart young lady, brilliant woman, graduated from all the test schools in high school and everything. Good girl. And good girl got introduced to crack. She was cracked out. By the time I meet her, she's coming out of Dale. She's up in New Hampshire. I got to approve her to come down and live in her mom's house. I'm reading the report. This we're all men here, right? Yeah. You're going to be good. So, I hate it. So I'm reading the report, and this girl was so cracked out, she pissed in the sink, the kitchen sink. I was like, you can't come here. Your mama can't handle you. And now everybody's here pissed because she's not a place to stay. I'm like, okay. I ain't gonna meet the girl. And I was like, okay. She's pretty. She's smart, very sharp. I'm like, okay. So we got, I'm not sure what. No. She ends up going to school because she's brilliant. Stop and get her degree. She's working full time. She's doing great. When I come by to see her, it's almost like I'm seeing my niece. She wants to see me. She wants to see what's going on. And one day I came by and she just was off. I said, what's going on? She's like, oh. And finally I said, what is wrong? And she looked at me and she said, they found a lump in my breast. And I'm so scared. And the PO was like, Well, you don't know everything's going to happen. Let's kind of like, wait till the end. That's the PO. The minister, gotta give her a hug. And once the minister gave her a hug, it's the beginning of the end. This job is just about over because you just crossed the line. And I knew it. You crossed the line. You leave it so. But the minister, the one with the heart of God, the one who wants to serve, the one who wants to be a blessing, she needed a hug. And when I hugged her, she melted and cried along. And then we went into, well, do you have a diagnosis yet? Blah, blah, blah. She's like, no, we kind of talked her through it. In 2 weeks, so a week or so later, she called me and she's screaming on the phone, it's my kids, it's my kids. I was like, all right, all right. She was like, thank you, thank you. She was, because I had to transform to what God wanted me to be. And that was the beginning of the end of that job. But it was the beginning of me finding out who he really was. Because through ministry, I heard all these crazy stories. And my wife loves this story, but she's telling me because I'm getting personal with her. I'm letting her get to know me. And I remember we had gone through a few sessions, and this new guy came in, and he said, "Well, we're here because you're going to help us, and you got all together." And I just looked at him, I started laughing, and I said to him, I said, "How many of y'all think I got issues?" And everybody's here. When I just started laughing, I said, "I got issues. I'm just here to help you be a better person, whatever that is. I'm not here to tell you and define God for you because that's a personal relationship. You need to define Him for yourself. If you define God based on one telling you, and remember this dude's mother, this is our crazy story. This guy's got life with parole. Ain't been in 30 years. Why? Because you can't handle what you did. So you go to the pro board, minimizing the fact you stabbed this dude a number of times, threw him in the trunk, and set him on fire. Yeah, that's the graphic stuff that you may have to deal with when you get into prison industry. And you gotta be okay with it. Because guess what? You don't know if prison wasn't part of God's plan. Because if you look at the Bible, it was part of a plan for a lot of people. So how do you know the plan for this person that's in prison right now was always part of God's plan? Because you cannot minister to people that if you ain't there for. How does one person minister to another if he's not in prison? And I'm saying to Brother Joe here, and I was telling both of them, if y'all got something to say, speak up, because I never spent one single solitary night, no matter how many times I visit. And I was doing 10 sessions a month for, at the peak, probably 4 or 5 years, 10 sessions a month. And I did this program for 12 years. Well, no matter how many times I went, I never spent the night. And so I cannot sit there and act like I know everything. I had to go get some guys that had spent the night. And I got one guy who's a Christian, another guy who believed in God. You have to ask him if he's a Christian. I brought various guys in with their perspective because they had spent the night. Yo, what up?
At one point, prison saved my life. I was uh, I was taking a jump too far in the streets, and I had every Jamaican posse, every San Domingo posse, feds, the cops, and I had to hide down the wind to the point that I just got tired. And I turned myself in,
Yeah.
and that prison saved my life. I met a minister and got me on the pack. That was the kid.
Thank you for that. Because they all complain about the prison, this and that. And I just, okay, let me just ask a question. But the path you were on, if you didn't get locked up, where would you be right now? And half the room said dead. And I said, well, then is it a bad thing here? You know, you got to help people with perspective. And we also met a guy who did not know God existed. Did not know God existed. And so, again, learning the nature of God, all I said to him was, well, didn't somebody warn you not to go out that night? He was like, yeah. I said, haven't you been warned a few times about, yeah, it's not a good night to go out? Your girl was like, please don't go out, please don't go out. He was like, yeah. I said, how do you know that wasn't God trying to use somebody to warn you? And it was like a light bulb went on. And I left him right there. Left him right there. Because now what I wanted to do is keep going through his mind about all the times that might have been God. But unfortunately, I brought a Christianese with me. Man, I was so pissed after that. Because the next thing he says to the guy, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And I looked at that guy's eyes, and that guy's eyes said, what are you talking about? We just got him to understand that God made you real in your life. And here you are trying to put another notch in your Christian go. Man, I wanted to just crack it. And the bad thing is that guy never came back. Never came back. Because you wanted to hear him say the words, you could go tell people, I got this guy saved. You didn't get anybody saved, and none of us get anybody saved. God doesn't need you. Come on. I'm a tool, you're a screwdriver, you're a hammer, and it depends what tool he needs at that moment. And you'll be blessed that he's using you. Never about you. Never about you. It's all about the glory of God. And do you want to be used? Or do you want to be exalted? Going into the prison will humble you. Because you'll realize how good you have it. You also realize that some of these people, they you. And I remember the first time I realized that God was like saying, man, I don't need you. Bald-headed fool. I'm talking to this guy, man, and this dude is like granite. And he got out, and I met him in Field's Corner. You know, I'm talking to him about God. You know, God. And he looked at me all nonchalant. I said, I know who God is. And he proceeded to tell me that he was in a fight in the prison. Both of them dudes had knives, and he had nothing. He said when it was over, both of them were on the ground. His shirt was all cut up. There wasn't a mark on it. He said, I didn't do that. That was God. And I heard God say to me, see, I don't need you. They know me. I was like, my bad. My bad. Huh? A lot of people tend to forget that. You do. You tend to forget it because, and this is what a friend of mine told me. He said, and you guys are blessed because you don't have this. But they say the pulpit is like crack to a pastor. But you got a humble pastor. And you need to appreciate your humble pastor. You don't know if God don't understand you very long. Because God can snatch up and say, I got more work to do than somewhere else. He's on loan. Appreciate the loan. Step up your game. Become the man God called you to be. Upgrade your relationship with him. And when you upgrade your relationship with him, it has nothing to do with Sunday. Everybody looks good on Sunday. Tell me about your faith on Monday through Saturday. On Sunday, everybody look good. You got the nice clothes on. You know the best service I ever went to was MCI Concord. MCI Concord. These brothers apparently were fans of Motown. And they wrote songs to God. They wrote love songs to God, and they could sing. And on the drums was a Muslim brother. So it was this was the Christian service. with the Muslim brothers on the drums, and he helped write the song, and they would harmonize it. And I was like sitting there just so it don't matter what everybody's wearing, they're all wearing the same stuff. And they are praising. I'm in awe of this because it's nothing but men praising God. And the pastor, poor guy, he was like, "Well, you got to leave time for Reverend Payne to preach." I said, "You got to preach, let them go. Sure, I ain't gonna never get this again. I can always preach. I preach out of the car on the way home. Who cares? I'm getting blessed." Best service I've been to. Then I'm talking to somebody in my family, a Christian minister, and he tells me how, well, that's not church. Why ain't church? And he starts talking about the administration and the officers and all that stuff. It's like I'm sitting there listening to him, and I'm like thinking about that. Do you listen to yourself, dude? So let me get this straight. Wherever Jesus was, if there was no officers, administration, secretary, and all that stuff, it wasn't really church. So we reduced church to an institution, not recognizing what it really is supposed to be, a place of worship and touch God's heart.
Back to what you're saying, I was in Santa Rita in California, and they were trying to recruit me to the Muslims into the white supremacy of the Nazis, whatever they call it. And I didn't want to be part of it. I was going through like drug withdrawal, and I just didn't want to deal with any of that stuff. I was raised that way, and I didn't agree with any of that stuff. So it's a four-tier system with like 100-man rooms per pod type thing. And so certain times of the day they open them all up. You can go in and out. Well, the leader of the white supremacists came up and I was sleeping. He tried to stab me in the head. And I felt it go by my ear. And I woke up. And all I could think of was Jesus loves you. And he tried to stab me about 60 more times and he missed my head every single time. And there's no reason because my head was like right here. There was no reason for him. So I know, and when Jesus came to me, he said, I thought the guy was just an idiot. And then when Jesus came to me and I had my tongue, he's like, you had nothing to do with that. That was all me.
Prison is the devil's house. Prison is the devil's house. If you ever go there and you hear that door shut, you will never forget the sound of that door slamming. It's like it hits, it's metal on metal, it reverberates for about 6-7 seconds. And your mind automatically tells you that gate ain't open too quickly. And for a lot of prisons, that's just the first gate. Because then you get into, what they call it. You get the name of it.
Dungeon?
Tears.
Huh?
Tears.
No, when you first walk in, you get that first thing. No, that's where y'all come in. So that's where the inmates come in. That's where y'all came through. This is where the visitors come through. Okay, so basically one door shuts, bam, and you stand there and you wait for the other door to open. And it shuts, bam. When we were doing our thing in Shirley Medium, we were walking through movement. So usually when you're doing a prison circus, they either bring the prisoners in, and then they bring you in, or they bring you in, and then they bring the prisoners in. We were walking through during movement. So we're walking right through the whole, people going this way. We're walking through, we've got no escorts. Huh? Thank you. And my first time in there, I'm saying, is this going to work out, God? Because I used to be a probation officer. Somebody might have had a probation problem with a probation officer way back when that had hair, didn't have hair, whatever. And all of a sudden, he's like, and he's already doing double life because killing me is the freebie. But they like me. I remember I had one knucklehead, I got enough of a violent people in the room, and in this punk kid robs over people. And he wants to speak up one night. I'm telling him, we're talking about parole for life. He's talking about parole for being a punk. I shouldn't have said that, but anyway. So he's going back and forth with me, and my parents going like, yo, dude, I can take you. Now, the other dudes I might have a lot of problems with, you, I take out. So At one point, he kept talking, so the dude who rehearsed the role for, I said, just keep talking to me, baby, just shut up. He got pissed. He said, you shut up. You don't come in doing this. And the dudes in the back of the room said, what you say? And I was like, whoa. It's like, no, man. So what I found out later was, someone told me, your program got a lot of respect. I was like, why you say that? He said, you got all the leaders in there. I said, I do? He said, yeah, all them dudes in the back run this prison. Oh, nice to know. The other thing you need to know is like, oh, this is how this going to come. I'll just say. Christians suck at lying. You don't get enough practice. You go into a prison, these guys are professionals at lying, deceit, manipulation, extortion. If you go in there trying to put on a facade, they're going to see right through it. Because they're professionals. Christians are good people. The moment you try to put on a facade, it won't fit. So if you're not ready to be open and honest and kind of straightforward, you're going to get chewed up. When I first went in there, I was the worst part of me. Like, I'm saved, but you know how you're saved and you still got some issues to work out? That's who went in there first. I was cussing the rest of them. And finally, God said, man, cut that out. I was like, oh, hi, Lord. So I said, yo, man, Lord told me to stop praying. And so they were like, okay. So another time, I once slipped out. I said, oh, sorry, Lord, sorry. And, another time, no one slipped out. A dude in the back said, yo, the Lord told you to stop swearing. I was like, you're right. My bad, thank you. Because I wasn't trying to be anything but real. I got my issues. But through my issues and their issues, can we find a better way for you to live? So my whole point was like, you can't be who you were. So who will you be when you get out? That was the carrot. And so they were running down their ideas and their thoughts on how they would function to get out. And we had to dig into that mindset that was not productive. We had to dig into that mindset that allowed them to do what they did and be okay with it. We had to take apart a lot of stuff. So I had to get transparent so they would get transparent so we could talk about some of your issues in your head, the stuff that goes wrong. Here's the crazy thing. A bunch of them followed me to the church I was at. They didn't stay because the church wasn't ready. Church wasn't ready. They couldn't come there just for me. They needed to have some other people, and the church wasn't ready. The church was too afraid to talk to them. The church was too afraid to get next to them. Well, get this. One of the imams told me so was the temple. The mosque is the same thing. They're not accepted. And the funny thing is that these guys will tell you stories about God that allow you to see God in a broader sense. They can tell you stories about other people, stuff they've seen. Until we recognize that as you read your Bible, how many of God's people did he use in prison? Prison was part of his honing for some people. About our Moses should have been convicted for second-degree murder. Read your Bible. He says, he looked left, he looked right. Seeing no one, that is premeditated. Premeditated. He found them. And so we got to get out of this. If we really want to show who God is, we got to get out of that box. If we really want people to understand who God is, they have to see God through you. I went in and told them how many used it. They called my character reverend. Mm-hmm. They called my character, my openness, pastor. one big mountain white boy, Nick, big gigantic mountain white boy. He said, Pastor, I got a question. I was supposed to ask. He said, does God hold people accountable for a book they don't read? Okay. So I went, because at the time I'm at the A&E Institute, I went to the leader of the A&E Institute, and I said, this is a question I got. Because I told Nick I'd give him the answer next week. So I asked, the big head honcho minister, running all these other ministers, I asked him the question. And he said, well, I believe that Jesus Christ is, I said, so you didn't answer the question. So, okay, thank you.
Yes.
He didn't answer the question. So you want to get out your box. That's okay. There's a lot of questions that we're never going to get answers to. And it's okay not to have the answers because maybe you get that guy to go search for himself. There's another story where the guy, did I tell you this one? My wife tells this one. She said the guy came to me and he said, can I talk to you? I said, sure. He said, I think God's calling me and I don't know how to answer it. I think I'm such a disappointment. And I said to him, not a disappointment, God. In fact, he started calling you. He's letting you know how much he loves you. Sit still and write down whatever it says to you. Now, think about if I told him to go to church. He came to me with an intimate conversation that he was having struggle with. Think about if I sent him to the church without the church knowing what was going on with him. It wouldn't work. I do over and over. Let me change that. Have you gotten to the place in your life with God that you can share your God, your internal God, with somebody else? And if you haven't, that's fine, because now you know where you're at. My thing is, if you stay there, that's on you. If you accept that spot, that's on you. But you're going to have to answer for it, because once you find out, you're now responsible for the information.
Yeah.
And I have tons, I go on online, tons of stories about my neighbor down the street who I knew, but I didn't know. But I knew him later when he got out. And he told me about how, he was a street pharmacist. And other crew caught one, and they're firing him. And he got away. He said he got in the house, and he had thick bro. He said, I got in the house, there was a bullet hole in my shirt here. There was a bullet hole in my shirt here. The no bullet hole in me. He said that day I was done. He said, now they caught up with me for everything I did do. He said, so I ended up doing 5 for defense. He said, but I was fine with that. Because after the bullet situation, he knew God was with me. He knew God was with me. And you hear about life and death stories when you open yourself up to what God is doing beyond your comprehension. And this is how it needs to be. It's one thing. This is where God introduced me to my ministry. I was at New Covenant. It was a singles ministry. They had this lady came in. She just died. And she was speaking to the sisters about the Jezebel spirit. And I was the driver because I had a BMW and I said quoted and they wanted me to, look at it. So I'm the driver. So after she's done, I come backstage, I got some juice and water to see how she's doing. And she's talking to me, but she's not talking to me. She says, do you think they knew I loved them? She said, I do love them. She said, I asked God for a nice ministry, but this is what he gave. And at that point, I realized God gives you a ministry. You don't get to choose it. It's not about what you want. It's not about you. It's about him. And he will give you what he's empowered you to do. You know my Reverend Haynes, right? I asked Reverend Haynes to mention me. He turned me down. Never gave me an answer. At this point, I look at it as like, you didn't want me on that path. You wanted me to be on the front line of ministry. You wanted me to be that guy who's, and I can tell you the stuff that's on my head so messed up. I've been on the streets with SWAT, with a barricaded client and SWAT out here, and I'm talking to the guy to come outside. We're on Carbon Hills, Carbon Hill Ave, whatever, on and the street alive with all these people and all these cops, and my guy's inside, and they're about to bust in, about to arrest his mama, bust his sister's head over, she's screaming, and I'm sitting there with him, get out of here. They're gonna shoot me. They're not gonna shoot you. There are 50 witnesses out here. And he finally came out, and I'm like, I'm cool as a cucumber. Later on, I'm sitting there going, oh God, I can't believe you put me in this situation. I'm in a black neighborhood with a black guy inside, with a white SWAT here, and this brother's trying to talk him off. Whose side are you on, dude? That's the kind of stuff I've been a part of. But it's all, God uses it all. Because all these stories I'm telling you, it's like, you want to do prison ministry? Are you ready to be transparent? The first thing I asked God when he said me in was, God, one of these might not like me. And so I said, do I have to be ready to die and serve him? Yeah, you do. You do. One of my other favorite times this past March, I was at Harvard Divinity graduation, and I was George Vincente graduated um, with a master's degree in divinity. He was released from MCI Conville 4 years ago. He's on life parole right now, his second degree murder. Our conversation was, George, do you know the guy you killed is a sacrifice for your life to change? And he's like, wow, I never thought of that. I was like, yeah, theologically. When you get that, you get to bring it back to you. And it's like, man, that's deep.
And then prison walls, like the chapels and stuff, most of the time for don't like detail and stuff like that. A lot of them are like this, where they're doing 20+ years. So it's not an easy position to get. And I was actually chosen for it. I learned so much from it. Like, the elders, one of the guys was coming home. We think we'd be a good fit. And I ended up getting the job.
Yeah, you it's, the pastor said to me, he said, it's a gift. I said, yeah, it's a gift. But you pay for it.
That's what
You pay
you get what you get.
You pay for it. Because all the stuff that I've done, there's a lot of stuff that I struggle with. And I shouldn't struggle. There's a lot of stuff I deal with because I got here and been able to do this ministry. And are you ready to make that sacrifice? Because ministry is about sacrifice. If you don't believe me, ask him when he gets all the phone calls in the middle of the night when everybody talks to him about their problem that he got 3 small kids. 3, 5, sorry. 5 small kids. He said the 3 boys and 2. Yeah, he said 2, right?
Yeah.
3 or 5 small kids. They're all small. Oh, Pastor. Oh, Pastor this, Pastor that. Oh, had talked to Pastor. He got 5 kids and a wife.
It's a gift.
Huh?
It's a gift. Sacrifice.
It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I understand it. If you want to get into prison ministry, great. Oh, I forgot this other thing. There's a huge difference between jail and prison. Huge difference. Don't get them confused. Jail is a much more immature group. They all, and this is the language that's used inside, they all got numbers, right? And what does that mean when they got numbers? They know when they're getting out. When you got letters, it says life without or with parole. Everybody else has a number, which means they're getting out. Working with the life was easy because they had to do work to get out. They had to do internal. And sometimes that stuff is embedded in some deep stuff. I met a guy who had done it, when I met him, he had done 30 years. And good guy, we were getting fine. And then he said, I said, what's going on? Talk to him. He says, you don't know what I did. I said, what'd you do? He said, I walked up to a car and shot my friend in the face with a shotgun. I said, okay, so was y'all in the game? He's like, yeah. I said, so what happened? I think he sold me some fake drugs. Okay. I said, so you're in the game, right? He's like, yeah. I said, game has no friends. If he sold you some bad drugs, you have to confront him according to the game. According to the game, he can't give you those drugs because then everybody else is going to come get some. So it demands confrontation. And I said, and let me ask you this. Are you saying you'd rather that I be talking to him than to you? And he's like, oh no, I need to give you something. And that was the beginning of him starting to recognize that he was holding himself back. And shortly after that, he made the way. Married someone who looked at me. Smart. Yeah, I don't know about the marriage couple.
Marriage couple.
Because what I've also found is these guys can pick up good women in a monastery. That's the one part we got to work with them on is picking them up. So, anybody got any questions at this point?
Yeah, it's not a question. It's just that when I got out, my last period was 20, about two and a half longer now. I got 21. I did 21 months, but it was after I had did all the crazy times. I had to straighten up, went down south, raise my kids, come back to Massachusetts, and get a domestic violate. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. Picking a woman.
Right. But that 21 months is the one that got me closer to God. I opened up my Bible every day just because I didn't know what I was reading. I read Psalms and Proverbs every day, every morning. It branched into a small Bible study. I same just like this book right here. I don't know how I did it, but most of the times when I first go in, I'm throwing hands. This time, I went from the dog to the best job in the house to getting cut. Good time, at least a year and a half. And I had to put recall on it. Revoking revised. The revoking revised came out after I got off. And that's how I got to Bishop. Right?
You want to know what the worst prison I was in at? Surely, no. Rocket Falls.
You know anything about that?
No, that's a jail. That was it.
Back in the day.
Not going to the jail. So Concord Farms was the worst. And you know why? It's because they were all Christian. They were all Christian. And they were reading their Bible. and they were coming and they were testing me on the knowledge of the Bible, and I'm sitting there just looking at them going like, "You got no application. You're inside an institution. You haven't tried any of this stuff out."
Right.
I was like, "But you want to tell me what I'm supposed to say?" One time they really got mad at me because it was a young man he was getting out. And I was like, "Okay, so where you gonna live?" So I'm gonna live with my girlfriend. I said, "Okay. So you're saved now, right?" So yeah. I said, "So you're saved, you're gonna live with your girlfriend. How's that gonna work out?" And the dude sat there like, he didn't know. He's only 23.
So he didn't know.
So the elder guys that were running the church were like, "Well, you should tell him not to sleep with his girlfriend." And I said, "Well, does he know that?" And they go, "Yeah." I said, "Then why do I need to tell him?" And they go like, "We need to reinforce it." I was like, "Why? Did you guys tell him it?" "Yeah." "So why do I need to tell him?" I wasn't going to tell him that because I don't want to condemn. I don't know his girlfriend. No, daggone well she horny if her man been gone for 3 years. How am I going to sit there and tell her or him and her not to do something that's not realistic? And I want him to call me. If I chastise him and tell him what he shouldn't do, he's not going to call me because he's going to feel bad, like, "Oh, I did this and now he's not." No, it's a process. You're 23. You just got saved. You've been in the institution. If I was 23 and just got out and I girlfriend was waiting for me, would I be sitting there going like, "No, honey, I'm saved now"? Anybody in
Let's be
here?
realistic.
Okay.
That's
Anybody else besides you? Anybody in here can sit there and say like, "No, not me." Come on, let's be real. And that's the problem. It's like we're not real.
Let's be real. Yeah.
We're not real. We forgot the process it took us to get to where we are and how long it took and how many stumbles we had. So now we don't offer grace to other people.
So here's the song.
The reverend was on record.
Right. Yeah.
We're playing.
Like I was saying, I had an opportunity to go do prison ministry with AA and AA, but something messed up. Bishop was in my life at the time too, and he had told me seriously, "Not ready." I'm starting to understand now why I wasn't ready. What? Because I'm very much interested in going back to and giving back, and I want to be trained.
So there's many ways to start. Okay, if you're going to start as a group, then you need to approach a chaplain. You need to approach a chaplain.
You're talking about the prison?
Chaplain anywhere. On any chaplain. Approach a chaplain because they'll know the procedure. It might be as simple as like, connecting with a chaplain and saying, "Hey, we want to be part of helping these guys get out. Can we start writing letters?" Okay. It's a simple way. It's a way that doesn't hang you out because the other things you have to realize, and I don't want to scare anybody, but these guys are mad resourceful. You friend the wrong person. I have a lot of experience in this. Lots of experience. But still, I have